Welcome back to Cinema Corner. I'm Blake, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Alex and Josh.
And today we are reviewing The Penguin, another entry in Matt Reeves' universe. And all 8 episodes are now out on HBO Max. So if you haven't seen it yet, go and watch it. Who wants to go first? Because this is an epic right here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start off with this. Obviously, we are covering an entire 8-episode season, about 8-ish hours, because each one was about an hour. So this video will not touch on everything. We are obviously mainly focusing on the highlights and the main points. Otherwise, this video would be super long. So forgive us in the comments if there are littler things that we do not talk about as much, as we are primarily just talking about the main things of season 1 and potentially the only season. I guess I shouldn't even say season 1. We don't know if there will be another, so it might just be this is it for the Penguin. But yeah, so I just want to get that out there for anybody. We will not be covering absolutely everything in this show. With that, Alex, thoughts?
Okay, well, let me just say this. Oz, I am so happy that Matt Reeves just gets it. You know, this is how you do a villain correctly. You don't make them like an anti-hero at the end. You don't pull punches. You see his arc from Carmine's henchman into the eventual villain that we all know. And it was just brilliant writing, brilliant acting. I mean, so many people in this show can get an Emmy. There's just Cristin Milioti, obviously Colin Farrell. The list goes on, but it's just, it was handled perfectly. I gotta say, there's only one thing in the show that I didn't quite agree with, or just felt like it wasn't quite needed. Otherwise, I was here every week because I watched it weekly, and I was just like ready to watch the next one and the next one and the next one. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts at the moment. I'll dive deeper after you guys give your little spiel.
I think the only one that deserves an Emmy is the kid version of Oz. So he did a great job.
Stop.
He did awesome.
I knew you would have to say something. Leave him alone. He did his best.
I liked him. I didn't think he was that bad. You know, it was just kind of funny. I think his looks and his talking made it kind of even more of like, oh my god, dude, this little fuck's a loser.
Leave him alone.
Little demon. Blake, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like Alex said, overall, I think the acting was phenomenal. His mother, the more elderly mom, the current day mom, I guess you could say, her acting I thought was phenomenal as well. Obviously, Vic did great. Overall, I mean, the costume design alone, like Oz, we saw so many great shots of Colin Farrell in that, and we saw some of him being completely unclothed. Just, it's not like they just focus on like his face or anything like that. Like, we saw his foot being as messed up as it was, giving him that hobble. Like, we saw Oz completely, and he looked phenomenal. So I think costume, everything about this show was the writing. Like you said, I mean, there's so many Emmys alone in this show. And I think a bunch of that just kind of goes back to Matt Reeves is just crafting an amazing universe and storyline that is definitely getting recognized as, I don't know what it was. I think I saw at some point it said like a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, I believe. Something crazy high, yeah. And it absolutely deserves it. I mean, this is one that, if this is it for the Penguin, I don't know if they are going to continue the kind of series or not. These 8 episodes were just phenomenal, as being, we're learning about Oz and the kind of criminal underworld of Gotham. And, you know, obviously some people were a little bit like, oh, we're going to see Batman. When's Batman's going to show up? Kind of like hoping we'd see something. We didn't need him to show up for this to be amazing, as it showed why Oz is such a awful person. And obviously R.I.P. Vic. I guess we'll get more into that on if it is R.I.P. as some people believe or not. But yeah, like you said, Alex, they didn't pull any punches. This is not an anti-hero story. This is a true villain. This guy is an absolute monster. And we kind of see him finally rise to power. But yeah, I mean, overall, obviously the first episode, I thought the beginning was incredible of seeing him kill Alberto. That scene was just right off the bat, was not at all what I was expecting to happen with this show. And from there, it just kind of goes on. This heavily focuses on kind of the Falcone story as well. This is not just an Oz story. We get a lot about the Falcones, and then the Maronis show up a little bit in this as well. They have a pretty decent role in it. But this fully gives you a lot about Gotham, not just focusing on the rich areas, obviously, as we go back to where Oz is from and Vic. But yeah, I just thought it was just character building and everything was phenomenal with it. And yeah, I expect a lot of Emmy, not even nominations, a lot of Emmy wins for this show.
Yeah, it was definitely nice after coming off that complete blunder of a finale for Agatha. So, really, I gotta say, the only gripe I had with this was the absolute just fall off of the cast for my boy Carmine Falcone. You know, how couldn't they bring him back? He deserved the bag. If he was asking for the bag, you can bring the former actor back. I think his portrayal is obviously much better. But also really didn't matter. He was only in it for very limited of the time. One thing that surprised me was kind of how of a slower start it was to the Penguin's rise to power. Obviously, we didn't even see his full rise until the very end. My reason being that is after rewatching the Batman, it kind of feels like he was more powerful in the actual movie than he kind of definitely starts off in the show. Because in the movie, I mean, he is confident and cocky as hell to the Batman. I mean, the only time he kind of shows this more similar of a weaker self is, you know, when he's with Gordon and Batman investigating him, and he's like, "Oh, what are you showing me?" That's about the only interaction I say kind of felt the same. But otherwise, you know, at the end, he kind of made it seem like he was immediately doing that power grab of when it came to kind of throwing Carmine to the side and not helping him. So that was kind of the only bit I felt was a bit off, but obviously it totally worked because we needed a slow burn of building of what happened after they destroyed the city, as well as his complete rise to what this character is going to be. I also enjoy the contrast to the family values of Penguin and as well as Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne's from the Batman was more about how family gives you strength. And obviously, literally the last line is basically family makes you weak. And that's how the show ends. It's just another nice touch of what makes Batman villains great is that basically any strength that Batman has, he's going to have a villain that can oppose it and use his strength against him. So I think we may see potentially family be used against the Batman in the future for the Penguin. That might be something alluding to that. Definitely will be nice. Was a fun contrast. Also, don't get why every Vic in my life has to die. You know, just shout out Vic from 2K16. Just he died. And I got this Vic here. He's dying. Just some reason every Vic dies. And I think he's going to stay dead. But if we get more of them, obviously that's fine. Because every actor in this was phenomenal. So if we saw anybody come back, that's okay. I think it definitely left a lot of things open-ended, as well as even Sophia returning because of getting the letter at the end.
From Selena.
Other than that, I mean, the only thing that, like, I wish I got so much more of was Salvatore, because I love the actor. Anytime I see him in something, and he's the only reason why I even cared about Detroit Become Human, that game, because he's one of the cops in it. He's just phenomenal. I love him as an actor. He just always does a solid job. He just appears randomly in movies and shows, and he always does a solid job. So I felt like we kind of didn't get enough of him. You know, he kind of came in and was more used as just a tool for the Penguin and him just kind of being a psychopath. But yeah, I don't even know what more you could really say about the film. I think the best thing is that it kept the style and the feel of Matt Reeves, the Batman. That was the biggest worry I had going into this. And it if you told me he directed everything, I would have believed you because
Yeah.
it felt that close.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of say in this. Obviously, it's his universe, so he's like the main person that's kind of laying out the groundworks. But I feel like we also have to shout out the main showrunner, Lauren LeFranc, who worked closely with Matt Reeves to just craft a beautiful continuation of the movie, and to not only have it just be like feel the same way, because essentially what you're doing here is you're cutting up a movie and making it into like a show. So it's not even a full movie, and you're still having that same feeling that was very prominently felt in the movie, and having that feeling throughout a whole 8 hour like series is actually impressive. So definitely props out to her, and obviously to Matt to just continue that vibe, and you can tell it's the same Gotham, the same. You definitely saw more of it too. That was also nice to see, like the very wealthy areas that we only saw in the Batman was essentially Wayne Manor, and this one you saw like the Falcone Mansion, and you saw like all like the neighboring cities, and then obviously you saw the complete contrast to Crown Point, which was obviously like the main area where like the vans were parked and just got flooded. And yeah, it was. I genuinely have never wanted to rewatch a series before, especially so quickly after finishing it. And I feel like when the Batman 2 comes out, I would want to watch the Batman, watch the 8 episodes of the Penguin, and then go directly into the movie. That's how.
Oh, absolutely.
That's how perfect
dude.
they crafted this show. And I can't say the same about any other studio or whatever that has done something similar where they go from movie to show to movie. Not the case here.
Yeah, that's what I think is so impressive is how this feels so much like the Batman in so many ways. The writing, the way every Gotham looks, and I thought again the writing was, there's so many little lines of like kind of comedy throughout such a dark show that just made it so enjoyable to watch. And it's incredibly impressive that you can watch the Batman and then go watch this, and they are so closely tied, and there's so many things that are actually connected. And this ends, and that stuff that kind of happened are going to carry over and actually be addressed quickly. And I think that's a huge compliment to them and how important the writing was to connect these stories. And they thought everything out. I mean, they talked about possibly having Robert Pattinson show up and meet Vic or something, and they decided, no, we don't know if that would really fit kind of what we're going for. And it's like, props to them for being like, would people have loved if the Batman showed up in this? Absolutely. But they're like, the story and what we're trying to build is more important than just giving you a little crowd pleaser moment now that kind of might take away from what we're actually doing in the long term. So I thought that was just incredibly impressive of them. And I think also it's just important to see, like, obviously the Riddler, we kind of felt he kind of won in a way, and he got what he wanted done in the Batman in a sense, but also like this kind of covered, like, in the end all he did is destroy the poor people of Gotham once again, because we saw Crown Point still without power and how destroyed everything still was because of what he did with exploding, and Gotham was able to get back up and have electricity and all that stuff, and everything seemed relatively okay. But it's like these poor cities are still suffering. It's like, what, you didn't do anything really. Like, once again, like, you were trying to get back at the rich people and all that, but you still just completely destroyed all of these poor areas. So like, I just think it was just so well done of kind of showing that like this world is actually all connected, and it actually, obviously Marvel is kind of the one thing you can kind of think about when you think about these worlds, but it's like, besides what Age of Ultron, Tony somewhat is like, oh, this kid died while we were fighting, we dropped a rock on their head or whatever. Like, that's really the only time you ever hear like the negative outcomes of like the Avengers destroying a city in a fight. And like this, in the very first one, we see the actual impact the Riddler had on other areas. And it's just like,
Vic
this actually
being
is covered.
the main one.
Right.
It's like the one that we follow in the show. We see what Riddler's bombings did to his family and his neighbors and his life. And that's what makes the ending so tragic, is that he lost a family and he felt like he had gained one in Oz. And obviously Oz doing the thing that makes him the Penguin.
family.
Gone.
Hate to see it.
And you know what? I saw something so fucked up on TikTok too of an edit where at the beginning he's trying to convince him not to leave. I think it was like episode 3 or 4. He's like, people will talk about us, and the last thing he does is he throws away his license in the water, essentially erasing his name, so no one will ever remember Vic. And that's fucked up. Well, yeah, you will, but like in
I always
universe,
remember my Vics.
in universe, which is that's just another thing. Like on top, like things that happen later on in the show, kind of calling back to certain even like conversations, like little things here and there that just kind of tie it all up in a nice neat bow. And like sometimes at the end of the episodes, I would like watch like the making of, and they would talk about how this is like a story of like tragedy. This isn't going to be like some hoorah, like thing at the end. It's going to be kind of like dark, and like the ending is going to kind of leave you thinking about certain things. And it's like, this guy's a fucking fucked up monster.
They wanted to make sure that when people left the Penguin that nobody was rooting for him, because they did such a good job of both Sophia and Oz at times giving them sympathy where you felt for the character, kind of seeing stuff in their backstory. But
you jump back and forth. You're like, who do I side with here? And it's
exactly.
That's
and by the end of it, they made sure nobody was on Oz's side. They were like, we're going to make sure everybody hates him the way that we want to. Which,
the truth came out.
Yeah, which, I mean, that was just, it was so well done. And like Sophia's story was just so, at points you were rooting for her because of everything that's happened. And then she starts doing stuff. They're like, okay, now you're getting to the point where you are the villain. And then obviously she ends up in her personal hell all over again, back in Arkham. Which obviously I'm sure that's going to be explored. And like Josh mentioned earlier, we see, Selena writes her a letter at the end of it. So we hopefully will get to see more Sophia in the future, whether it's just in Batman movies or if they continue these spin-off shows. That'll kind of be a thing. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to talk about an 8-episode show that was so well crafted that there really wasn't any episodes where you can kind of skip over. Like, there's just so much in this show that every episode was entertaining. And I was gonna ask about kind of if you guys had anything negative, which Josh kind of talked on, and to me that's really the only negative I had of the show. Mark Strong is obviously a good actor. John Turturro was amazing as Carmine in the Batman. I definitely thought there was a huge step back. And like you said, thankfully Carmine wasn't a huge focus of this show. If he was, I think it seriously would have hurt the show. Just because Mark Strong's... I did not enjoy his Carmine at all.
John just gave such a great performance. That's what the hard thing is. Like, Mark is amazing actor. That is Carmine Falcone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
and I agree with you guys.
The family better too.
I agree with you guys fully, but like you guys said, he wasn't really in the show much. And when you hear what happened, it's like she was in there for 10 years. So we're also thinking this is a younger Carmine, and at the same time, I also heard that they wanted him back, but Turturro didn't want to do it because of he wasn't comfortable with him being physical against women and assaulting women and stuff like that.
I'll be the guy to say it. I'm a big John Turturro fan. Obviously, he is a main star of Transformers. Clearly, you're straight up bitch, dog. What are we talking about right now? What are we talking? You're an actor.
He didn't get
your
paid
character
about it. That's what it is.
He doesn't even have to act and do anything to the women that were accused of him in the show. They were all accused. It's not even like he had to act and do it to another person. There's just claims.
Which, if you think about it,
worse stuff in the Batman to actual actors than you would have done in this. So that whole excuse, I heard that was a thing too. I'm like, John, grow up. You're an actor, buddy. What are you talking about right now? I thought that was when I heard that, I was like, I'm a big John Turturro fan. What do you do your job? I don't know what else to tell you. Do your job. You weren't actually having to do anything. There was just accusations in the show about what his character did. And he was like, oh, I don't support that. It's like, okay. I don't support you getting a paycheck then. What are you talking about, bro? Act. Be an actor. I don't know. I thought that was incredibly stupid of him. But yeah, I just thought it was a decade change, but I thought there was a huge difference of Mark Strong's character and his in Carmine in the Batman just feels so in control, so relaxed. His performance of how he talks, he just feels so untouchable. And it's like Mark Strong's character just seemed a little bit like he didn't know what was going on, like a little more panicked, a little more rushed, and not as thought out. And it was like, I don't know if in a decade there's that big of a difference from Carmine's character. So yeah, that was the big thing for me. It was like Carmine,
Which,
in
I
the
mean, to
Batman
me, it was
so much better.
And I agree, but it wasn't anything that like kind of like hindered it at all, to me at all.
Agreed.
The thing for me though was the Doctor Julian Rush.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I feel like he was kind of either underused or not, or kind of used too much. Like I felt like he was just kind of just there. You know, if he was he was the only character that I kind of felt was like, well, you're not really delving deep into what this guy is. He's just, you know, some, like, to us, he's just some random Arkham Asylum doctor that, you know, obviously had to go along with Carmine's doctor things to continue to screw up Sophia's life in Arkham, and that's it. And then you obviously develop feelings for her, and that's about it. That's about all that you are really about. So I thought maybe potentially they would go into like, oh, maybe this is how the technology for like the fear toxin is, like, you know, there's no like mystical kind of shit in Matt Reeves' universe. So maybe like this kind of like putting people in a trance, and he's a doctor. I was like, maybe this is how you kind of get that Scarecrow kind of feel to it. But no, they didn't really go that direction either. So I felt like in terms of like the show, he was really the only character to me that kind of was like, yeah, I could have done without. Or if you wanted to do more with him, that probably would have been better too. But unfortunately, he was kind of just in that little area of like, you know, unfortunate.
Yeah,
but...
it's fair. I do definitely agree that it was a weird place for him. It was like, either give me more of him,
or don't give him,
just get him out. Yeah, I do agree.
Yeah.
He was in kind of weird place.
But that's it for me.
Yeah, just a phenomenal series. I don't know if we just want to quickly kind of talk about where we might think the future of this goes before we kind of give an overall rating. Well, as we talked about, I mean, it's just, there's so much to talk about in an entire season of a show like this.
There is.
But it really makes you think that the people in control, obviously we are not in control of our multi-billion view channel, but it makes you think that maybe they should have switched and done Agatha all along season recap, because you kind of thought that probably was going to suck a lot more. That's easier to talk about in a season rather than doing episode to episode. And something that was definitely going to be way more well thought out, like the Penguin should have got episode weekly reviews. Obviously we don't control that. We'll probably talk to upper management about that next time around, but it is rough when a show is this amazing and this detailed to try to fit an entire episode or an entire single series into one
review.
Episode.
Yeah.
I think the best part for the
tough.
future of this is that they left it open-ended for anything for the next Batman film.
Right.
They just based, obviously, like you mentioned, Scarecrow possibility in the future. You got also Court of Owls, just hidden details, newspapers.
Oh my god, dude, they were just layering it with that.
Yeah,
like the curtains looking like white owls.
And then there's also the old news articles too about like the Riddler and some victims for that. It was in there.
Hush Easter eggs.
Yeah, so
there's
plenty, and then also obviously Penguin himself, which is confirmed to be in the next one. He is at least verbally confirmed he's in it. We don't know how much he's in it. So, and obviously the losers that look at the contracts, he's definitely in it, as well as potentially for the third film too. So there's a lot of open-ended, which I think is the best part, because I think that's one thing that is super hard about making a show for a universe, is not forcing the director, because it's not the same director. I get Matt Reeves obviously had a big hand in this, but still not forcing him to go down an alley because of a show.
Right.
So
for continuity's sake.
Yeah.
Let me just touch on this real quick. Again, with that ending, with him leaving his mom in the state that she chose not to be in. She asked him, "Don't let me live my life out as a vegetable. Shoot me." He made her promise to shoot her, and he didn't. He's going to keep her there. because he's so fucked up in the head. He's like, I want to continue to make you proud. Put her up in the penthouse. She can't do anything anymore, and forces, oh shoot, I forgot her name.
Eve.
Eve, yeah. He forces her to dress up as his mom to tell him that he's proud. And obviously, it ends with her saying, "There's no one that can stop you now." Pans out of the penthouse. Boom! All you see is the bat signal sign in the sky, and it ends. And I'm like, beautiful. Like nothing more to be said. It just ends, and then the beautiful score, which I think Michael, well, I forget his name, the main composer for the Batman. His son did the score for the show. So his son did the score for the Penguin show.
Wait,
and his score, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's who composes the music for the Penguin. Is his son.
I figured it was just him again. I didn't realize it was his son.
No, his son composed
get that
the music for
out
this.
of here. Don't let that happen again.
But still, it just the score comes in and it just ends, and it's like perfect. And again, I love how it just leaves it open for Matt to just cook with all of these characters and just use the Penguin, who's obviously in a completely different place from when he last was seen in the movie. He's now at the top of the food chain in terms of the,
I got a Rolls Royce crime too. I think that's a little.
That's a true upgrade in wealth.
They're really showing that this man has money now. The fact that he's got Rolls Royce like that.
He's rich. You mentioned the Eve thing. That's a callback to the conversation with Sophia and Eve when Sophia asks, "What does Eve make you do? Is there any weird things when she was asking the classic names? Oh, you're the most powerful, blah blah blah." And she says, "No, but it is something different." And then we finally learned what that different is.
Damn.
Yeah. So he's been doing that.
Yeah. Sigmund Freud was just clapping in his grave with his whole archetype or his whole story. You know?
Yeah.
He was just going crazy with it. But yeah, I think it was just another added on thing to make sure people really don't like the Penguin. Because it's like, this guy's a psycho with his mom. Like, what are we doing here, dressing her up like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree that this was one of the greatest. The whole season finale was just phenomenal. That last episode, everything that happened, what happened with Sophia, how he drove her out and you didn't know what was going to happen. Next thing you know, she's arrested and going back. Obviously him going to the courthouse and making that deal, which again we got a whole I'm talking about like, oh, Bella Real is creating a like anti-Ford, which is just setting up for something with Harvey Dent. Obviously could be a part of that. So yeah, I mean, they definitely left it open wherever they want to go with the continuation of this entire story. They have so many different villains and stuff that they can do for him. But yeah, that ending was amazing. Just panning out, the bad signal hitting the sky, dude. That
it's like
definitely will be
there's always someone who can
leading up to the Batman 2 when we finally get that.
Yeah, it's like it is beautiful. There's like the direct answers. Like there's no one who can stop you now. And it's like boom. Actually, there's always this one special one who's always out there in the shadows. Love it. It is perfect. Scores, gentlemen. What are we thinking? Because I originally had it down as something, and you guys just talking about it just brought it up again. And
yeah,
I think I don't ever want to do this. I don't ever want to give something this.
Do it.
I had it as a 9.9 because I couldn't just say 10. I can't. But then you guys are talking about it. It's like, what? Fuck it. Like, I'm gonna give it a 10. I have to give it a 10. It was perfect. Perfect. The definition of perfect.
I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
I respect it. I gave it a 9.5. I thought this was amazing. I only gave it that 0.5 just because, like I said, I think Mark Strong kind of upset me a little because how I felt kind of hurt Carmine in the first one, just because I'm like, come on now, what are we doing? He was such a great character. Yeah, I gave it a 9.5. I think the show was amazing. There's a couple things in it that were a little bit like, whatever. I do think Sophia went. I feel like at one point she took a turn where she went a little bit from being like this badass whatever to a little like, okay, I don't feel like she's as in control or as powerful anymore. She was kind of like losing her edge to me personally. So I kind of feel like she dropped a little bit, but yeah, I think 9.5 for me. This was an amazing 8 episodes of TV.
For me, I give it a 8.9. I think for me, shows, the biggest thing about shows for me is what happens to it moving forward to the universe. So I think my rating will go up with the Batman 2, but it has to have the Batman 2 for it to go up. Because otherwise, my main really issue is I didn't get to see as much of the powerful Penguin as much as I really thought I was going to in this film, as how I mentioned at the beginning of it felt like in the Batman, Penguin was much more of a powerful character than he definitely started in this film. So it was a nice slow build, but I was fighting, my rating is fighting my expectations. So I think rewatching it, it will go up. But for now, it's 8.9, which is hella good. So
yeah, I mean that's absolutely fair that the Penguin, this was a lot more of him climbing and kind of seeing how low he was on the totem pole and how smart he can be to climb back up. But I do agree that there was definitely, by the end of the Batman to this, he does feel quite different in terms of where he is in control. It's like you said, his confidence level as well as just respect wise as well.
yeah,
And I think the only rebuttal I can say about that is maybe because he did feel a certain way with Carmine, and Carmine definitely had him like in favor, so he was definitely like his right hand man. So he felt like that, like, I don't know, protection around him to like, he's like, yeah, nothing's gonna like touch me, you know, because I'm Carmine's right hand man. Who's gonna touch me? And then once Carmine is out of the picture, the family comes in the fold. They're grasping for power, and all of a sudden, Oz is kind of pushed down to pretty much nothing. So that's the only, like, that's how I'm thinking of it. So that's why I'm like, I'm okay with it not feeling quite the same, and that's how I'm connecting it in my head, canon wise. But yeah, otherwise, again, watch it if you guys haven't already. Essentially,
Absolutely, if you haven't. And I think this also just solidifies we will be getting a continuation of Matt Reeves, just to kind of end this video. I feel like the viewership numbers that have came out have been unbelievable for this. Obviously, reviews have been unbelievable of this. I think I saw something like its opening episode to its ending episode, like the viewership number was like crazy high, like, which is obviously a huge promising thing. Matt Reeves, obviously, he put something out at the end of it, kind of talking about, we'll see you guys in the Batman Part 2, so it's very clear that it is going to be greenlit and start filming. But I think this has pretty much solidified that we will be getting a trilogy of Batman and potentially other spin-offs for this universe as well, which is obviously a great note. And so yeah, I think we definitely will be getting it, so that's going to kind of end it. As always, comment down below what your thoughts were. Obviously, like we said, we were not able to touch on every single thing with the Penguin Season 1. But overall, the show is amazing. So leave your comments down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys in the next one.